Let's learn how to play Cthulhu Death May Die. Cthulhu Death May Die is a dungeon crawler where we play as investigators attempting to stop an unholy ritual to summon an Elder One. Once the ritual is disrupted, the Elder One's avatar is susceptible to damage. We fight through their boss's stages until we either go down fighting or we bring down the beast. I have timestamps in every part of this video to help you find exactly what you need. In very basic terms, the game is set up by choosing your season, your episode, and your Elder One. After that, you pick your characters and start playing the game. All you have to do to win the game is disrupt the ritual and slay the Elder One. But just so you know, this is a very hard game. It is very RNG based and you're gonna die a lot. There's 3 ways you can actually lose the game. That is, if all the investigators on the board die, or if one of the investigators die before the Elder One is summoned to the board, or if the summoning token reaches the last space in its track and the full force of the Elder One enters our reality. Before we continue on, there is some keywords in the game that you need to know when you're looking at cards and so on. First one is the tokens. A token is anything on the board that does not have a base. This could be the gates, fire tokens, start and position tokens, anything like that. If something is referenced as a figurine, it is any model that has a base, anything like the cultists, monsters, and your character. If something is referenced to as an investigator, it is a model that is your character within the game. Each investigator has their own character sheet showing their stats, their abilities, and their sanity track. If anything's referenced to as an enemy, that is a monster you will have to fight in the game. That could be the cultists, the monsters, or the Elder Ones. If the reference just says cultists, that means the basic red cultist, not any other form of cultist. If the reference is to a monster, it is any figurine on the board that is not your player, not a cultist, and not an Elder One. And these also include the Elder One's minions. And lastly, Elder Ones. These are the big boys. These are things like Cthulhu, Pastor, Dagon, and so on. With all the keywords covered, let's actually set up your very first game. To set up the game, firstly, we need to pick our season. So that is any of the boxes, season 1, season 2, season 3, and so on. Once that's picked, we need to have a look at what episode we want to play. Choose whatever one you want or play them in order. After that, we need to choose which Elder One we want to play with. That could be Cthulhu, Pastor, whatever is in the box, or whatever one you want to play with. Next, we're going to get our Elder One tracker board here, and we're going to begin setting it up. Firstly, we're going to put the summoning token in the first slot of the track. Then, we're going to put the Elder One's model on top of it, as well as the Elder One's boss card into the Elder One slot. After that, we're going to look in our episode box and take out the episode mission card, putting it in its slot. We're also going to put the episode's monster cards in there, as well as the Elder One minions. Next, we need to set up the board. So if you flip over the episode card, it will show you what tiles you need and all tokens. Set up the board exactly as shown on this card. Let's place any health, fire, and any Elder One specific tokens to the side of the board, as well as any extra figurines we have, like cultists, monsters, and the Elder One's minions. Just remember, if you're playing on Tabletop Simulator, don't copy and paste these tokens, as there is only supposed to be a finite amount. After that, we're going to take the Mythos cards from our Elder One and the Mythos cards in our episode box. Let's shuffle them all together. Don't worry about mixing them up. You'll see here at the bottom of the card, it shows exactly where the card belongs. This one says Cthulhu, this one says episode 1. That way you're never gonna get them completely mixed up. Next up, we're gonna take the discovery cards in the episode box and shuffle them up, put them on the board. Now it's time to pick our investigators for the game. I personally think everyone should pick a character that they think looks coolest, and don't worry about stats just yet. That's stuff we could do later on. We're gonna take the investigator model and the character sheet and put it near the board. As this game can be played in single player and multiplayer, there's a finite amount of investigators you can take. If you're playing on your own, you will select 2 investigators to control. You're going to play with both of them one after another. In a multiplayer game, each person that is playing takes 1 investigator each. The game is built for 1 to 5 players, so never go over 5 investigators. If you wanted to say fuck the rules and play with more than 1 character in the game, make sure you don't go over 5 total. After that, we're going to look at our character boards here and put our tentacle tokens to show our current sanity, stress, health, and skills, just like you see here. Lastly, you're going to shuffle your insanity deck and deal 1 out to every player. In the base rules, it says to have this card face up in the beginning. Personally, I like to keep it face down just to make sure your mental illness is extra spicy. Now that the game is all set up, let's deep dive into some areas and explain what's actually going on. This is our main storyboard for critical information, and we're going to be constantly referencing it in the whole game. At the very top here is the Elder One tracker. During the game, the Elder One will do something called advance. When this happens, we move the token up the track by 1. Once we reach the red area, their Elder One's avatar is summoned if they are not already on the board. And the last circle is when the Elder One breaks through the plane of reality and destroys the whole world. Now looking at the Elder One slot, this is where you put the cards of whatever Elder One you picked in the setup. This will show the different stages that the Elder One will do throughout the game. It's going to show you what you need to do each turn, what happens when they advance, what their health is, and the dice to roll when they attack. Below that is the Elder One's corrupted minions. Again, this shows what dice to roll, their abilities, and their health. Next up is the episode slot. On the front, it gives us the mission's lore, how to disrupt the mission's ritual, what to do when the Elder One advances, and any special rules in that episode. As shown in this setup, once you flip that card over, it will show you all the tiles, tokens, and figurines needed for that mission. With that done, our last slot is episode monsters. This is the same as the Elder One minion cards, but this is just the monster specific to this mission. Now for the character sheet. Firstly, we can see our character art, their name, and a bit of lore, and if you flip the sheet over, you get more lore. At the top is our sanity track. We start at the far left, and if we reach the end, we succumb to our sanity and are considered dead. When we take a sanity damage in the game, we go up this track by 1. Once we reach the red circle known as the insanity threshold, our character's insanity card triggers, immediately doing whatever the card says. After that, the player is allowed to level up a skill. Once you reach an insanity threshold, any extra sanity damage is no longer counted. For example, you need 1 sanity damage to reach your threshold, then you roll 3 tentacles. You're only going to take 1 damage because you reached that threshold, and the other 2 tentacles are just thrown away. For timing, just note that if more than 1 characters reach the insanity threshold, they're going to activate clockwise from the current player. Looking on the right, we can see our skills. These are character specific and influence what we can and can't do. Each circle represents the level of the skill. You level up by going to the next slot. Most skills, we are told to do something, then as we level up, we add to that. For example, looking at Morgan, his swiftness skill at level 1 lets us run an additional space when we do that action. However, at level 2, it lets us run that additional space and we can do the run action for free once per turn. Some skills, when they level up, say in bold, instead. This means you do this instead of what you did in level 1. Let's look at Ahmed. Ahmed's healing prayer lets him heal a single stress or wound per turn, but at level 2 it says instead, let him heal 2 points in any combination, so this could be 1 in health, 1 in stress, or both in health for example. Whereas in level 3, it lets him heal 2 stress and 2 wounds. So remember, if it says instead, you're doing something different than what it was before. With the skills covered, let's look in the bottom left. This is going to show us our stress represented by the lightning shape and the hearts showing our wounds. Stress is used by spending 1 of them to re-roll a dice or used by card effects. Our wounds show how much health we have. Once we reach the skull, we are considered dead. We spend our wounds by getting attacked or used in card effects. And lastly, on the middle left of our character sheet, we could see a short summary on how to take your turn. We're going to cover this soon, but this is a great quick info reference that you're always going to be looking at throughout the game. Mythos Cards. So Mythos Cards are how the AI actually play the game. Every turn after the player has done all their actions, they will draw a Mythos card and it will tell you exactly what to do. On the card, you're going to follow everything that it says from the top down. For example, this one called Monsters in the Labs. First thing first we got to do, each fire vampire and Byakhee move 1 space towards you. If there's none of them on the field, we ignore this. If there is, we do this action. Next, we're going to summon a fire vampire at the yellow gate. Once that's done, we're going to summon a Byakhee at the blue gate. Once all them actions are done, we can discard into a discard pile. Most importantly though, if you get a card that has this summoning symbol on it, you want to keep that out and not in the discard pile. Once you get free of the cards with the summoning symbol on them, the Elder One will advance, but we'll go over that later on. During the game, players get a chance to get discovery cards. These are like items or companions that you can get. You do this by flipping the card and reading out what it says in the middle. It will firstly give us a little bit of lore. After that, it will tell us what we need to do. Some of them have conditions like, if you have this item, do this. Or it might say something like, you may take this amount of stress to claim this. If you do not satisfy the requirement it is asking for, you just return the card back to the discovery pile. However, if you did have the requirements and you want to take that item, you're going to take the card, place it underneath your character sheet on the left or the right, showing whichever item you picked up. Each item is unique, so read whatever it says to find out what you can do with it, how to use it, and if it doesn't tell you when you could use it, it means you can use it anytime during your turn. So we can get items, or we can also get companions. Companions give you abilities that may level up a skill that you already have, or give you a skill that you never had before. Companions also have their own wound pools. If you take a wound during the game, you may choose for your companion to take it instead of you. If your companion's wounds go to 0, you discard the card because they are now dead. Looking at the board, you can see that each area is different. Some of them are one big area, and some of them have multiple spaces within the same tile. You can figure out how many spaces are in a tile by looking at the walls between the rooms and using the arrows indicating exits. Each arrow on the tile shows an exit to the room that your character may walk through to get to the adjacent tile or space it is pointing to. If an arrow points to nothing, you can't go that way. It's specifically just for a different mission. We don't need to worry about it. For example, this tile right here only has one space, whereas this tile has 3 spaces on it. You also notice that some missions basically have 2 boards. The only way to get to this next area is by going into the space that has a stairs or tunnel token, then moving to the other board that has the other token. This is considered moving to another space, so just remember that when you're counting the free spaces you've moved. Speaking of tokens, you can see a blue one with investigators on it. This represents the starting area for the mission. You will place your character in this tile to start the game. You're also going to see gates. These are red, yellow, and blue. The gates are interdimensional rifts that the cultists are summoning monsters through. Cultists, the Elder One, and monsters can all be summoned here, and this normally happens during the Mythos phase when you're going through the Mythos card. Next up, you're going to see the fire tokens. If you leave a room with fire tokens in it, count how many tokens were in that room. Put that on your character sheet so you remember. At the end of your turn, you're going to roll that amount of dice to do damage to yourself, but we're going to cover that in the end turn phase. Be aware though, fire doesn't affect the enemies in the game. Lastly, you're going to see some episode and Elder One specific tokens. The episode specific tokens can be interacted with using the episode actions found on our episode card on our storyboard, and the Elder One specific tokens can cause effects to you. You'll find these effects on the Elder One stage cards. Finally, we get to the good stuff. In this game, we use 2 different types of dice, the black die and the green die. The black dice have 5 different results: a success, an elder sign, tentacle, a blank, or a mixture of 2 results. While the green dice are basically the same as black, they don't have any tentacles on them. When the player is asked to make a roll for their character, they will always roll 3 black dice base. Some skills and sanity thresholds of the game also let the player make the roll while also rolling additional green dice. Let's go over each result. A success means you do whatever you're trying to do once. For example, if you'd attack an enemy, 1 success means you take away 1 of their wounds. An elder sign means nothing unless you have an ability that turns it into a success. An example of this is the skill Arcane Mastery. Tentacle means that you've now taken some sanity damage. Every tentacle that you roll, you add 1 to your sanity track. If it's blank, it just means nothing. Don't worry about it, man. Lastly, if it has 2 different symbols on it, you do both of them in one go. For example, if it's a tentacle and a success, you're gonna do 1 damage, and you're also gonna take 1 sanity damage. When a roll is being made, whoever's turn it is may spend 1 of their stress to re-roll the die once. Some skills also let the player re-roll the dice for free. For example, toughness lets you re-roll 1 fire or 1 attack against you without spending a stress. Note that only the re-roll die counts. If you originally rolled a tentacle, then you re-roll it into a blank, you do not take that sanity damage. Looking at the rolling sequence, after you've rolled your dice, you may then do your re-rolls. After all the re-rolls are made, your dice are now final. You will resolve, firstly, our successes and elder signs. After this, you're going to resolve all your tentacles. If you reach an insanity threshold, you'll do your insanity card effects then. Now let's look at the actual player turn. When it's your turn, your character can take up to 3 actions. Beware though, some skills allow you to do more than 3 actions, so make sure you read them. Each action is as follows. You could do a run, an attack, a rest, trade, or an episode specific action. A run is when you move your character. You may move up to 3 spaces by default in your run. However, you don't have to move all 3 spaces if you don't want to. Just note that if you enter a room with an enemy, then you leave that room, the enemy will follow you to the next space. They're going to continue following you every space that you move. And if the room has a fire in it, you must do a fire check at the end of your turn. Looking at attacking, a player may choose one enemy in their space to attack. They do this by making a roll, so rolling 3 black dice, plus any additional green dice that you may have got from skills, sanity, items, etc. Remember, you are only targeting one enemy, so if you roll more than what you need to kill him, the extra wounds are lost. Next skill is resting. A rest can be performed by being in a space with no enemies in it. When you do this action, you heal up to 3 stress or health. You may distribute these points however you like. For example, you can put 2 into wounds, 1 into stress, or just all 3 into wounds in one go. Trading can be done with another character in the same space as you. During this action, you give any amount of items as you want. So you can give the guy in the same space as you 5 items, he can give you 1. Doesn't matter how many. Lastly, episode actions. These can be found in the episode card that is on the Elder One tracker. These could be anything from putting out a fire, looting body for some ancient artifacts. Just do whatever the action tells you to do. After all our actions are complete, we move on to the Mythos phase. You're going to draw a Mythos card and then immediately resolve any effects on that card from top to bottom. Once complete, you discard that card, but just remember to keep any of the cards with the summoning symbols separate. After the Mythos phase, we move on to investigate or fight. You're going to check the room if you have any enemies with you or not. If there is no enemies, you are considered safe, and you can draw 1 discovery card and resolve any of its effects. If there is an enemy in the room, however, they will attack you. An enemy attacks you by rolling the dice shown on their monster's card in the bottom left. When they roll, if any of them becomes a success, you're going to take that many wounds. If it is a tentacle, you're going to take that many sanity damage. Remember, you can re-roll these using your stress. With all of that done, you are now at the end of your turn, and it's time to do a few more checks. Firstly, any monster or Elder One effects that say at the end of the turn now happen. For example, Pastor gives you a yellow sign token as a little present. Secondly, you deal with fires by doing a fire check. Remember, every time you left a room with a fire, you wanted to put a token or something on your character to remember how many fires were in that room. Now, roll the dice for each one of them fires. Any successes do a wound to you, and any tentacles do a sanity damage. And remember, you can still reroll these with stress. Lastly, you check your Mythos Cards discard pile. If you have 3 cards with the summoning symbols on them, firstly, shuffle them back into the Mythos desk, and then the Elder One advances a step in its track. When another one advances, check their stages and the episode card to see what effects happen. For example, when Cthulhu advances, you put a token in your space, you summon a cultist, and move his star spawn. Now looking at summoning, the Elder One can be summoned to the board on 2 conditions. 1, if you've disrupted the ritualist's turn, or if you've reached the red space in the summoning track. You summon them by moving stage 1 of the Elder One's card to the side and revealing stage 2. You immediately resolve the effects it says on the card in the revealed section. For example, Cthulhu Hero will be summoned into your space. Then, if there is any enemies in an Ilie space, they will move 1 space towards you. Every stage of the Elder One is always active in the game. That means the effects that happened in stage 1 are still gonna happen. Same with stage 2, and so on. Also, if the Elder One has an end of turn effect, it still applies on the turn that it was summoned. If we were to face the full power of these entities, we would stand no chance. Good thing for us, we're only fighting a portion of the power. To fight an Elder One, you must have first disrupted the ritual. If you have not done this, you need to get it done ASAP, because the Elder One is completely invulnerable to any damage until so. When you attack an Elder One, it's the exact same as attacking any other enemies. You can see how much health they have on their Elder One card. Once you defeat a stage, you will reveal the next card, do all the effects it says on there, and their wounds will be reset to the number on the next card. If the Elder One attacks you, they roll the dice shown on stage 2. Then on stage 3, they add the additional dice shown, and on stage 4, they also add the additional dice. For example, with Cthulhu, stage 2, he rolls 2 black dice and 2 green dice. In stage 3, he adds an additional green dice to that pool, and stage 4, he adds an additional green and black dice to the pool. If you manage to defeat the final stage of the Elder One without you all dying, congratulations, you saved the world. And that's how you play Cthulhu Death May Die. I love this game and plan to start a series playing through it, so please check it out once it's up. Make sure you check out the featured video in the outro to see a nice example game pretty much covering everything we've covered here today. Till then, my friends, peace.